Honorable Prime Minister Philip Davis, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Your Excellency Mogwetsi Masisi, President of the Republic of Botswana, honored and distinguished guests, good afternoon. I'm Kishla Adderley, Acting Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister. The Bahamas is pleased to have hosted His Excellency Mogwetsi Masisi, the President of the Republic of Botswana, and his delegation over the last 2 days in an official visit which we believe has deepened enduring bonds between our two countries. It is our hope that the series of ministerial meetings centered around education, agriculture, and culture, among other areas, have yielded an exchange of ideas, strengthened diplomatic ties, and produced new friendships. Please welcome the Honorable Philip Davis and President Mogwetsi Masisi, President of the Republic of Botswana.
I should speak from here. First of all, welcome to conference.
Test.
Welcome to the press conference. Today stands as a testament to the strength and potential of international relations as we in the Bahamas warmly welcome the President of Botswana and his delegation. Not merely an official visit, but the growth of a deeply rooted friendship between our nations. This administration is actively strengthening its foreign policy, and the visit of the President of Botswana stands as a clear evidence of this commitment. These engagements highlight our dedication to deepening existing ties and exploring new partnerships, underscoring our nation's proactive stance in the global community. Throughout history, nations have found strength and prosperity, not just through self-reliance, but through the forging of strong friendships. And in this complex global environment, the importance of these partnerships cannot be overstated. Our meeting today, the dialogues of the past few days, and our future engagements are anchored in the spirit of camaraderie. Notably, both nations stood in solidarity during the re-election of the Commonwealth Secretary General, Baroness Patricia Scotland, underscoring our shared commitment to multilateral cooperation. Additionally, our mutual support in the candidatures for the Joint Inspection Unit and the International Maritime Organization further reflects our united front on the international stage. Our discussions have been both wide-ranging and profound. We have deliberated on mutual interests, particularly focusing on the sectors of tourism and agriculture. These areas, integral to both our economies, provide a canvas on which both the Bahamas and Botswana can jointly paint a picture of sustainable growth and development. Further solidifying our commitment, I am pleased to announce the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the Bahamas and Botswana. This MOU, comprehensive in its scope, touches upon areas not limited to economic development, cultural relations, tourism, environment, agriculture, health, education, and financial services. Through this agreement, we aim to foster deeper collaboration, leverage our unique strengths, and jointly address challenges to ensure mutual progress. The challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for our nations, from tourism, governance, are mirrored in the ambitions of Botswana's Vision 2030. 2036 and the Bahamas' Vision 2040. We anticipate that this visit will further consolidate our partnership and pave the way for enhanced cooperation in areas that align with the vision and aspirations of both our nations. True friendships, as we understand them, are not static. They demand care, mutual respect, and a consistent effort to grow stronger. With this visit, we have revisited our shared goals and set the stage for future engagement. As we approach the conclusion of this visit, I would like to convey my deepest appreciation to President Masisi and his delegation. Their presence and commitment to this friendship have been truly commendable. While this visit might be short in duration, the bonds we have fortified will last for years. In the days ahead, may we look back at this time as a pivotal moment when two friends, separated by geography, but united by shared values and took decisive steps toward a brighter partnership. Today, we say thank you with your presence. President Masisi, words?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. Dear ministers from the Bahamas and Botswana, senior officials, members of the media, very good afternoon. You might wish to begin by pardoning us because it's surely going to sound like it's a meeting of mutual admiration society. Because I echo the words of the Right Honorable Prime Minister in toto. For those of you who may not know, Botswana and Bahamas began their diplomatic relations in the year 2006. Preceding that, the then Prime Minister of the Bahamas, His Excellency Prime Minister Ingram, visited Botswana, paid a state visit to Botswana in 1999. And immediately following that, the then President of Botswana, President Justice Mogai, visited the Bahamas in 2000. Bahamas and Botswana are sovereign nation states, both coming out of a historical past that was led by the British prior to our independence. And so we became members of the Commonwealth. We're both members of the United Nations system and other organizations of common interest. We both have a legal framework that's born out of Roman Dutch law. We both are committed to the separation of powers. We both are committed to democratic dispensation. We both are committed to the rule of law. We both have a public service that was structured very much out of the British Foreign Service system. We both have adopted English, not our native tongue, but English as a medium of instruction and official language. And so it stands to reason that the common values we share may in some part have been informed and influenced by our past histories. But be that as it may, these shared values seem to have worked for Botswana and for Bahamas. For Prime Minister Philip Davis and I are only continuing the legacy of our predecessors in their friendships. And these friendships are purposive. They are for the good of both nations. For not only do we share values, but we also share ambitions. Bahamas has its Vision 2040. Botswana has its Vision 2036. And if you read both documents, there's a lot of tessellation, a lot of commonality. And these are the basis for the strong bilateral relations that we're rekindling by this visit. And I want to thank Prime Minister Davis, because when we met last year on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly, he so graciously and gladly, with a friendliness only a Bahamian can master, invited me to undertake this state visit along with my wife. So I really thank you for the invitation, Prime Minister. We have had a roaringly successful visit, and more than anything else, yes, we lived up to the dictum of the Bahamas and had sand between our toes. And not just in Nassau, in Exuma, with the pigs, swimming. And so we immersed in deep political dialogue where we exchanged views and agreed quite quickly after we explained the positions of each other to one another on voting patterns and support for each other's. Everything the Prime Minister asked of me in terms of Botswana's position, we yielded to. And so if we're to count for the vote, Botswana's vote is there, Bahamas. And what we asked of the Bahamas in terms of vote and alignment, we got. We came here focusing on several sectors the Prime Minister referred to, tourism being topmost on our list. And there's reason for that, because your tourism is among the best in the world. Why should we not associate with the best? We've come to ask for help. Prime Minister has yielded. We go home with the promise and expectation that we'll get help, and the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And so our tourism, difference that it may be, should also improve. We came with the sector, agricultural sector, and we have a variety of things that we do, so does Bahamas. And so in the intense discussions, consistent with the MOU signed, we've forged a partnership that should benefit both countries. We've come with a sector in financial services led by our governor of the central bank, and he met his counterpart. And we, in that sector too, we're going to intensify our collaboration. We also have a shared history in terms of our experiences in the blacklisting and the successful exiting out of blacklisting and the mutual commitment never to get back into that. We come here as friends with the sector of education. We come here as friends in our manifestation of our multipartyism. And so I had the opportunity to meet the leader of the opposition and one of his mates. I too brought our own opposition member of parliament to meet his friends as we met as those in ruling parties. And so when friends come together in this spirit, it can only be for the benefit of both countries, the economies, and the people. So we urge you, the public service of both countries, the political leadership of both countries, to realize our dreams and ambitions and these commitments that we've made to one another and uplift the people of the Bahamas and the people of Botswana through this change. I had opportunity to present a lecture to the staff students of the University of Bahamas and engage in an interactive session with the students and some members of the faculty in an open, transparent academic setting. And there too, we were able to make a commitment to have the institutions independent in academic pursuit as they are, to forge a partnership dedicated to research and pursuit of knowledge and excellence. And so the experience we've garnered from our research, particularly in the big two health threats we faced of HIV and AIDS and COVID pandemic, we're more than happy to share those experiences. And because we may have one or two more universities in UDU and places, and perhaps a broader diversity of courses we offer, for those that interest you at graduate level and doctoral level, the ministers would engage in this, and there would be some scholarships that we could afford to offer. We made that, Prime Minister, all in the name of friendship. All in the name of friendship. Countries, leaders, exhibiting their affinity to one another for the purpose of moving the economies and their people forward. And to round it off, we are also going to be attending the G77 plus China as of tomorrow in Cuba. And we'd follow that through by going off to the United Nations General Assembly, where we as individual persons met and cemented this. And so if we were to take it further than this state visit, it'd probably be on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly once again. And so I really want to thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and it was a delight to fly with your predecessor, Prime Minister Ingram, a wonderfully delightful man, and a reservoir of wisdom and knowledge, and experience the whole day with both of you. One of the things that we also take away as a delegation was to watch both of you from a distance in friendship and solidarity with no issues between the two of you. It's something to guard jealously and to celebrate. So we really applaud your peace and your humanity and your commitment to these ideals of good governance and peaceful transitions. And finally, I cannot go without thanking the media of Bahamas. I've never come across a media that's so dedicated to taking good pictures. I mean, they were not shy about stopping us, making us pose and do all sorts of things. And so I really appreciate their commitment to share these, which really forms part of the ecosystem and the subset of your tourism enterprise, because they want good images to go out there. They want to sell the happiness or market the happiness and show people that this was a highly successful state visit. And just for your information, to make sure I don't leave it not known, I had the big fortune of meeting and paying my courtesies and respects to the Governor General. Glad that you told me that for my visit, it was her first official assignment, engagement. And so I felt quite proud to invite her to my own country to undertake an official visit. And since I learned that the Prime Minister and the Governor General don't travel at the same time, I asked them to decide who comes before the other, because I've invited my brother here and his dear wife to come to Botswana, and we too can show off a bit of what we have, which is different. And by extension, I invite all Bahamians to come to Botswana and visit. There, I'm certain, if you perambulate the streets of Gaborone, the capital city, you will surely see somebody who looks like you and is probably your relative. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
much, Prime Minister Davis and President Masisi. We will now invite questions from members of the media. I'd just like to preface that question and answer session, though, by asking that you restrict your questions to those related to this official visit. Please raise your hand to be acknowledged. Stand, identify yourself and which media house you represent. Questions, please.
Uh, I could address the issue of climate change and the issue of use of natural resources. As you know, the whole thrust of climate change is designed to decarbonize the world. And the two words that they've been using is mitigation, which is for the purposes of decreasing our carbon footprint, and mitigation, which is to build infrastructure for the purposes of resilience. And when we talk about decarbonization, we're talking about the greenhouse gas emissions. Now, the question you raised about countries using their own natural resources, I'm at this last year, been very much involved in that discussion because one of our neighboring nations, Guyana, and Guyana and Suriname, have just discovered oil over the last 3-4 years. They're having the challenge from the industrialized world when it comes to their exploiting their oil. And because they're saying exploitation of their oil, which is their natural resource, will not be a mitigating factor against greenhouse emissions. But in the meantime, the legacy producers are still ramping up their production. Guyana and Suriname are countries that were in the IMF program for their opportunity to right the ship themselves. And so I happen to have been chairman of CARICOM for most of the year. I've been taking that argument to the world, particularly the United States, to allow new entrants on the market to be able to exploit their resources to help their people. And I'm not stopping that argument. You can continue. Because on one hand, they're saying, yes, you find, yes, you ought not to produce, but the oil producing companies, or the legacy producers, who in fact are primarily responsible for what we're experiencing as a result of climate, they're continuing to produce and ramping up production. And in recent times, they've been using the Ukraine war to ramp up production. And so, this, in my view, countries ought to be allowed to exploit their natural resource for the purposes of looking out for their people. Same time, I think we continue our search, innovation to see how we could convert that to make it cleaner oil or a cleaner fuel or just move to a cleaner source for energy. And that research ought to continue. So that is my view on that. Of course, we are now using, and there's another aspect to that you have to keep in mind, and it's called monetizing your carbon credits. So what they've done, what they've been doing, some of the major companies saying, don't exploit, and it'll be what they call an additionality under Articles of the Paris Agreement, and we'll pay you to keep it in the ground. I call it greenwashing. You're stopping me, but you're producing too, emitting. And so it is still a challenging fight for us, developing countries, post-industrialized world. And they're not interested in happening. But it's coming home to roost. Because I've said to them, they're not going to be safe. They'll be all safe. As long as they continue. They have climate refugees knocking on their doors. The challenge that the U.S. have on their southern border today, I submit that a lot of this is due to climate change. Because the majority of those refugees on their southern border comes from Central and South America. That region has been suffering a drought from 2015. Severe drought. So what's happening? People are pushed onto their border. But at the end of the day, I think it's on their own enlightened self-interest, something, and do something quick. That's on climate change, because wildlife issues impacting Botswana. I've learned a lot about it. Discussions with your president, sympathetic to it. Of course, we have a similar issue with sharks and turtles. The fishermen are complaining that the turtles, because we have a turtle sanctuary, so a ban on dealing with turtles. They are eating the grass, and therefore our conch is, you heard about conch. I told him about conch. and Prime Minister Ingham was supposed to deliver him a couple boxes today.
They've been delivered.
So our conch doesn't have feeding grounds anymore because of the proliferation of turtles. Sharks, we've been a shark sanctuary, and whereas we're not having any shark attacks per se, but they are also a predator on the biodiversity in the waters, and so we have to balance that as well. So with the elephants in particular, I'm sympathetic towards that. We're supposed to get all the information, and I'm going to support the president in his effort to be able to address the challenges that they're having with that issue.
Very much. Well, you will appreciate why the invitation also for a state visit, because one of the things on the itinerary of the Prime Minister is to be in the midst of the largest herd of elephants in the world in the wild in Botswana. And I guess when we begin our discussions, it shouldn't take too long to get the point home, particularly when you talk to the local residents of those areas, and many of whom have lost relatives, and lost a lot of property to the wildlife. But let me get to the first question on climate change and what my views are as I embolden and broaden the points raised by the Prime Minister, which I totally agree with. But you know, natural resources are natural resources everywhere. And sovereignty of nation states is sovereignty for every nation state. And unless we are redefining the lexical meaning of sovereignty, this position adopted by the so-called advanced economies, whose position is essentially born out of a deliberate attempt to objectivate reality, is flawed, completely flawed. I had never imagined that it was meant to be not flawed, it's also unjust. So when you look at the issues of just transition, they speak to the rights that nation states have as sovereign nation states with a common responsibility for the climate and planet Earth. And so if you have run your race and got an advancement as a result of starting earlier on, and then use every justification to not allow or dissuade or threaten, punish those who are just starting, which race is a race about survival? It's not just. And it's disrespectful of the intents and meanings of sovereignty. That's one. Two is that if we're really to take a measure of the impacts that nation states have on the climate, we cannot address it honestly unless you factor in relative responsibility and relative significance. If nation states had started utilizing these natural resources that have a negative and deleterious effect on climate, and they, proven by science, bear the responsibility of the greatest impact, not yesterday, not even the last few decades, but since the Industrial Revolution and perhaps before. This is out of cumulative impact. And you want to stop Guyana from survival or Suriname? It's unacceptable. And as the Prime Minister says, they are ramping up their production. Tell me what the impact of Guyana and Suriname's production is going to be in scale terms. Negligible. We have loads of coal in Botswana. We face similar pressures. But we are determined. Yes, we'll be responsible, but we will not be stopped from optimizing and responsibly using our coal. It's a just transition. We deserve to live and survive. The other, which I want to posture, is my personal view of what we ought to do as developing nation states. We need to redefine our alliances. We in Africa, your homeland, have signed a compact, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Why don't you, even through CORICAM, make noise about joining us? And we can broaden inter-trade among the diaspora and see what happens. We'll buy it. We'll help you. We're committed to you because many of the alliances are born out of these kind of relationships. And so we need to think of doing this to mitigate and come together as we face the threats that are unjust and born out of other interests, really, of continued perpetual subjugation. And so we need to be iterating on these matters more. The Prime Minister has, I think, aptly responded to the wildlife issue. I don't know how fair it's going to be for me to address a press conference in Botswana while in Bahamas to our farmers, but since you plead, pardon me, Mr. Prime Minister, if I can get your permission. Kara barui ko gae ke re santla ba nne tlhaga ba tlhokomele ba bege ha ba bona dinare di atumetse ko ga bone tshwetso e re tsereng re puso ko ra go leka gore di kgwetse re di gatelle di boele ko mahelong a tsone ka mekgwa yotlhe mme ka gore nare ke nare tse e leng gore di ka phatlalla mo segopeng sa tsone di tla bolawa le tsone tse e leng gore di ka itshupa gore di borai mo matshelong a batho kante di borai mo go ka tlhagogiseng tlhagelelo ya tsone mo dikgomong kwane leruong le lengwe di bolawe mme di bolawe ke ba e leng gore ba le bokgoni ba go di bolaya gore ha o e bolaya e swe o sekwa e go sa wa e rumola ya hela e bolaile wena se ke batlang ba gaetsho ba se itse ke gore botshelo ba motho le botshelo ba motho bo tla ko setlhoeng pele ga botshelo ba nare ha e le gore go a pala re ka mpara hela re tsa tshwetso ya go di ganyaola re tla leba tse di tla tlang mme batho ba tshetse le tsa bone ke a itumela.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister and Your Excellency, Mr. President. Before I invite the next question, I just ask that reporters restrict their questions to one each so that everyone here has an opportunity to ask a question who would like to do that. With that, next question, please.
My name is... Afternoon, Your Excellencies. My name is Ontaitile Boti from BTV News from Botswana. You signed a memorandum of understanding on bilateral and political consultation yesterday, and at a time when the African continent is experiencing military takeovers in some parts of Africa. I want to know what's your take on that, and what do you think can be done to avert those situations to spread across the African continent and even maybe here in the Caribbean. Thank you.
I'm truly saddened by any overthrow of government by military means or force. As President Basisi pointed out, we believe in the rule of law, we believe in democratic principles, and we believe that it is the will of the people, not the will of one or two ideologues who may have support of might to take over. And so it is my view that such efforts are unacceptable. It is not in keeping with acceptable norms of democratic principles. And efforts need to be done to avert such takeovers. Now, once it happened, what does one do? I think you just refer to your articles of partnerships, and if you have a path through your articles of partnership through the African Union, you engage in those, because again, if you enter those articles of partnership, that defines the relationship of each country. It also defines how, in the event of events such as that happens, what the body ought to do, and you engage in that process. If I follow what happened in Niger and Gabon, I heard from President, his name escapes me now, for Gabon, about what is happening, and I don't know. I mean, I prefer a diplomatic resolution of all these matters, but could that be arrived at? You who are close to it might be able to tell us. I'm just an outsider looking in. We've been in touch with the Bahamas, Scotland, to see how we as a collective body, a part of the Commonwealth, could help resolve the impasse and right the ship to what I call true sovereignty and a true democratic country. But again, it is a sad state of affairs, and I do urge those who would have take over in such a fashion to pause and right the ship and move quickly to get back to normalcy in those countries. We have similar problems next door with Haiti, but it is not in the magnitude that we're hearing that's occurring in the African countries. But we are working with trying to resolve those matters in Haiti as we speak. But that's the best I could answer at this time.
No, thank you very much. As one coming from the African continent, I'm also deeply saddened by the frequency, the intensity of military illegitimate takeovers of governments. But I think when these things happen, you need to pause and think and ask yourself, why does it happen? And what can we do about it? My personal view, as one of the closest I experienced, Your Excellency, is to do with a country pretty far away from Botswana, Niger. The president of Niger, a close friend of mine, had just come from Botswana, and barely 3 days after he landed, he was couped. And I've been in touch with him. Luckily, they still, I think, are allowing him to communicate to the outside world. So I often do check on him. But for me, it really is a manifestation of our insufficient investment in democracy. I don't think we're investing enough in democracy in most of our countries in Africa. While, or relative to, the significance, intensity of investment in military, hardware, and personnel who, in many instances, may not be sufficiently schooled in the values that speak to democratic ideals. But there may be a reason to this. I have a hypothesis. You know, as long as we do not invest enough in the generation of knowledge, intellectual capital, products and services, we will always be at the mercy of those who do. And those who do prioritize their interests. Because if you look at the coups in Africa recently, they don't seem to emerge from within. They seem to be serving the interests of those external. And they're not to do with any ideal form of governance. They're more to do with resources that are rare. And how sad it is that people speak of climate change and mitigation, resilience, and muster a lot of effort and energy to prevent us from doing certain things. But when coups come about, it becomes so abundantly clear what it is that they really want. The very same ones. And they need to be called out. And we should use forums such as the United Nations to call out on these nation states. Just take a look at those who were willing to talk to the rebels who took over these countries, or those who are not willing to condemn them, and those who are not willing to sanction them, and look at their real interests. And I posit that as long as we remain weak, fragmented, and weak is not just about your GDP, it's really about your capacity to be resilient and reject that which comes from outside that's hostile. And so I don't want to hog this. I'll leave the rest to your imagination. Thank you.
Are there further questions? Berthany?
Good afternoon, Berthany McDermott from R News. Prime Minister Davis, we heard you spoke about the Memorandum of Understanding. Can you expand a little more in telling us, I guess, how Bahamians can directly benefit from this? Some of the more, I guess, tangible benefits that they can get from a Memorandum of Understanding. And also, Mr. President, you spoke to being able to take from our tourism product. So can you tell us a bit specifically any aspects that you saw that stood out to you that you are looking to take home?
In respect, the Memorandum of Understanding, it broadly outlines the structure through which we can engage in intentional efforts to help each other's country and our people. And so, for example, if you take the issue of what is going on with the University of the Bahamas and universities in Botswana, he's already indicated that they'll offer scholarships to our students here to study in Botswana, particularly in the areas of research, because they have done a wonderful job in identifying and responding to the issue of HIV/AIDS and the recent pandemic, and have been able to identify products that could help, new products that helps the whole world. So how we benefit from that is being able to source those products, because they've now been identified to us. We'll be able to build capacity in that area by allowing our citizens to be able to go to Botswana and vice versa. I should say to you that some years ago, we did have a similar arrangement, because we trained several doctors that came here from Botswana, and we have been collaborating. It fell away, and that's why, as the president said, we are reigniting that arrangement and friendship that existed some time ago. But we will benefit we'll benefit from their strengths to build capacity in certain areas, right? And they will benefit from us, particularly with our strengths, where we can help them. So in agriculture, their development of I call it pastoral farming, with the cows and other animals of sort. They're known to have the best beef in the world. I'm tasting it tomorrow. Right, and so that we'll be able to learn from them as we are investing much in our agriculture and food security. We'll be able to learn much from them in that regard. I'll say no more.
Thank you very much. You asked about tourism and what our takeaway was. Well, for one of the things that's been most impressive about us is to realize that everybody in the Bahamas is a tour operator. Everybody. That's a big takeaway. Everybody welcomes you to Bahamas with a radiant smile. Everybody knows something esoteric about Bahamas that would interest you. Everybody is selling Bahamas. Everybody we came across. That's a big, big takeaway. Another one is the place where the ocean liners dock and the port. People come out and they immediately immersed into Bahamian culture. Immediately. All of them. We don't have that system at home. And it's the services, it's the ambiance, it's the language, it's the music, it's the clothing, the food, everything Bahamian, immediately. So it's in your face and your blood and system. And so it's really, really lovely to see. And then when we had the state dinner, reception last night, we had the junk canoe, is it? Amazing. I felt at home. The rhythm of the beat, and the big difference is you have the costumes. Elegant costumes. And do you know how much money and time and skill goes into that? The sheer splendor of color attracts even bees. So if you have that, we don't have it. The quality of the services in your hotels, amazing. Your ability to take pigs and put them on an island and teach them to swim, I mean, that just blew me away. I've never seen pigs swim until I came to the Bahamas. And I actually did not believe it. I mean, I'd read about it, I've been told about it, but I just, it's a marketing little gimmick. So, it was initially my program, then I didn't see it, and I had to tell the Prime Minister when I had I have got to see these pigs, Mr. Prime Minister. I made it my face so serious, it was like, that's what I come for. So, and I'm really glad he yielded to that. And we went and we saw pigs swimming, and they're a massive tourist attraction. Pigs. So, the other thing is the pigs are pretty fit, they're lean. They could run the Olympics. But to turn something that you take for granted into a unique, marketable product is just amazing. You are good. If you didn't know that, you are really good. So that's what we think. Thanks.
All right. I think that's it for questions. With that, thank you, Prime Minister Davis, and thank you, Mr. President Masisi. They say when you get the sand in your toes, you must come back. So we hope to see you soon. And of course, that invitation is extended to members of your delegation and the wider citizenry of Botswana. And we thank you for your invitation to visit your beautiful country as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a good afternoon.